Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Likewise, welcome back to the 411 Podcasting Network. We had a lot of shows. We have the interview podcast that Jeff does. We have the 411 on wrestling with Larry Zonka and usually Jeremy Lambert, occasionally Steve Cook. And, of course, this show. And, I don't know, maybe others coming in the future. I don't know all the plans. However you arrived at us, thank you for your support. Please subscribe, whatever your preferred methodology. If you have some app I'm unaware of, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts. So plenty of avenues to get all this entertaining goodness.
Yeah, we are recording this on Sunday, November the 10th. For those potentially listening in the future who might wonder what we're talking about it as new information becomes available.
AEW Full Gear just happened. Dr. Sleep bombed at the box office. And there was a UFC card with Zabit coming out on top.
Yeah, what you hear there is the dulcet tones of my regular partner in crime, Jeff Harris, who's back with us. First up, we'll be talking about, again, the Russia card, which existed. We'll be talking about this coming Saturday's event in Sao Paulo, which, sneakily not a bad card for, a somewhat run-of-the-mill, forgettable, under-promoted ESPN Plus show. And then whatever news we tend to think up. I have a few things here, but nothing. It was a pretty quiet week, all things considered. Jeff, let's go ahead and start with UFC on ESPN Plus 21, the UFC's event in Moscow. Main event, which is the only fight worth digging a tremendous amount into.
He's going places, I think.
Yeah, he pretty clearly is.
I'm not sure he's going to be like the featherweight Khabib, but he's well on his way.
He's not even close to.
I mean, this was really the main thing going for this card, really.
Yeah, Zabit defeats Calvin Kattar via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. This was only a 3-round fight because it got bumped to main event status on very late notice. Very, very fortunately for Zabit, I think, given how this fight played out.
Because the original main event was Cigano, Junior Dos Santos versus Alexander Volkov. That got switched at the last minute because of Junior's injury to Volkov versus Greg Hardy. And so as a result, we had Magomed Sharipov versus Calvin Kattar. 3 rounds. Win for Zabit. Dominant win. I think Zabit's I think he could be fighting for the title within the next year and a half or so.
They're probably going to push that. I don't like his chances at the moment.
Against Max Holloway, no, but
I don't like his chances against Jose Aldo or Volkanovski or even Brian Ortega, quite frankly. Now, on the plus side,
he's undefeated in the UFC, though.
Yeah, and beat a couple of Hammond Eggers. I mean, Calvin Kattar's his best level of opposition. And in credit to him, he won. And he's still got...
Stevens Stevens, not a world beater, but he's not a Hammond Egger either.
No, I meant the others. Yeah, Stevens, and I think Kattar does still represent his best level of opposition, all things considered.
Yeah, probably fair.
And look, I'm not complaining about him getting a slightly easier strength of schedule to begin with. That's not a bad policy to go with. It's just something to pay attention to. Do I think he'll be in the title picture? Yeah. There's still a few things I'd like to see develop in his game. One is his cardio. His basic habit throughout his UFC run is if he can't force takedowns, and he has a lot of takedowns. He was credited with just 1 in this fight, which is a testament to Kattar's takedown defense, proper footwork, and whatnot, because he was normally getting like 6 per fight, I think, which is a very high average statistically. But if he couldn't force that and just out-grapple you, he would do that for the first couple of rounds, win them, and then generally give away the third as he faded. And he gave away the third here as he faded. And while there were improvements you could see throughout the first 2 rounds, his circling was much less predictable. His kicking game has always been very good. He seemed a lot more refined in this fight. He didn't do a lot of the same just spinny, stupid stuff that he had in previous fights. But he still faded, and he still became susceptible to body shots and pressure as the fight wore on. I think if this were a 5-round fight, Kattar might have got him. But you fight the fight in front of you, and again, credit to him, he won. So, but I do need to see how he actually performs over 5 rounds, because that's a fairly significant consideration. I need to see how he does against someone who is a complete, more modern striker in that context. Because while Kattar is a very, very good striker, I don't mean to downplay that at all, the majority of what he does is very boxing centered. And that only really started to pay dividends as Zabit's legs stopped being under him as the fight progressed. Zabit still has a bit of an issue with power, and maybe there's just nothing really for that. Not everyone's a knockout artist. You learn to live with that. Power is one of those things that's really, really difficult to generate. You can one
of those guys either,
That's true. But a decent enough main event, and the future is incredibly bright for Zabit. Again, that man, when he's able to force grappling in particular at the moment, that's where he likes to overwhelm people. He has very, very good takedowns. He has very good back taking. He has a variety of submission attempts that he can throw at you. He's a handful. He's an absolute. This might seem like I've been down on him. I don't mean to be down on him. He's got a very, very bright future. I think he'll be in the title picture. I do believe that's an accurate assessment. That doesn't stop there from being habits and tendencies that we need and questions that we need to have to get answers to. But it also doesn't mean he's some gigantic scrub that is a product of nothing but hype. He's a very, very, very good fighter.
He's ranked number 5 now.
Probably a little bit too high, in all honesty.
But 6-0 in the UFC, hasn't lost since 2013, 18-1. What do you do for his next fight? Look, I know you're not a big Yair Rodriguez fan, but Rodriguez...
No, make that fight.
I mean, just because Rodriguez is coming off wins over Korean Zombie and Stevens,
I think you make that fight. I think you make it 5 rounds because...
Toughest test, but that might not be the toughest test for Zabit. Honestly, I would probably favor him matchup-wise in that fight.
There's a few contextual things that will determine that. One, we've seen Yair, for better and for worse, maintain his generalized level of output over 5 rounds. Okay. That man is in phenomenal shape. How Zabit deals with a guy with that kind of pace over that kind of time is a very, very real question. And it's one that you could ask of him in the Rodriguez fight without putting him at undue risk in other areas.
The other idea, you could put him against the winner of Moicano. No, wait. Moicano doesn't have a fight.
No, he lost his last one and seems to be a little bit derailed.
See, I like Moicano a lot. I'm not sure I want that for his next fight because he's down 0-2 right now.
I think if you wanted to really give Zabit a real test in many aspects, you give him the winner of the upcoming fight between Ortega and Korean Zombie.
Not the worst idea either. And does Jose Aldo have his next fight lined up?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, Jose Aldo would definitely be a test, but does Aldo even want that fight? Is Aldo even going to be fighting? Is he going to continue fighting at featherweight?
No, Aldo. Yeah, no. Oh, no, Aldo does have his next fight. My mistake. He's fighting Marlon Moraes at bantamweight, remember?
Fighting freaking at bantamweight. Well, hell. Damn, man. Aldo's really moving down. Damn it.
For one fight at a bare minimum.
Ugh. So I think the best idea right now, I mean, is Yair Rodriguez, and honestly, I'm picking Zabit to win that fight.
Yeah, I mean, people forget, but Zabit does train a lot with Frankie Edgar, and my giant criticism of Rodriguez over his last couple of fights, he has done nothing to address the issues that Frankie Edgar exploited. I think Zabit could pretty easily maul him if he's able to stay disciplined about it.
The winner of Ortega Zombie wouldn't be a terrible idea either. I'd be fine with that. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the title picture either coming up soon. So
almost certainly. I mean, again, somewhat jokes about his level of opposition aside, he's won 6 in a row, and that's not nothing.
So he reminds me so much of Khabib.
I'm a little curious as to why he does, but
well, kind of just that really tough grinding Dagestani, you know.
Zabit's style is wildly different from Khabib's.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, Zabit can wrestle, but if you look at what he does the majority of the time, again, there's a lot of significantly different choices he makes stylistically.
Khabib can strike too. He's not just he's been able to branch out outside of the wrestling ring.
A little, but Zabit also comes from they don't make this up when they say he comes from a kung fu tradition. That was his first martial art, was like straight up Shaolin, Kung Fu, and Wushu Sanda.
Huh. Kind of like Roy Nelson. Kind of like Roy Nelson.
Oh, not even close. That's a bad joke. No, I've pimped this particular video on the subject before. I think it's still up. The gentleman, I believe, in question cycles some of his videos on occasion. But the YouTube channel Mixed Mollywoppery has a really good video on Zabit called, I believe it's the Shaolin Master of Dagestan. That details the trainer who runs a little bit. It talks about Zabit. It talks about Muslim Salikov, who comes from that same school. But the guy, I forget the gentleman's name, so I apologize, but the guy who runs like a genuine boarding school for kung fu competition.
He has a master of sport in the discipline. Okay.
So again, Zabit has a very, very different style in many respects, but he can't. Again, the fact that he's forced a lot of grappling is a credit to him for a guy who started again more with the kind of flashier striking elements, which he still employs.
He's more of a grappler, though. He doesn't have any knockouts.
He tends to. Most of his finishes tend to be grappling related.
Right.
But most of his time is spent on the feet, I think.
I'll be looking forward to his next fight.
Yeah, I want to see him take a good step up, and I want to see him over 5 rounds. I think that's a big question that needs to be addressed prior to him fighting for the title.
What happened with the latest Greg Hardy disaster?
Well, our co-main event, Alexander Volkov defeats Greg Hardy via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Alexander Volkov fought very risk-averse, which I understand. Because heavyweight MMA is wildly unpredictable as a general rule. And Greg Hardy has power and is training with a really good team. Volkov, superior technician, just exploited that over all 3 rounds, kept peppering Hardy with kicks to the body and head, good straight jab, avoided any potential trouble. Hardy seemed to have injured his right hand or wrist in the first round and never really threw the right hand again. Given the short notice change of opponents, and everything that Volkov stood to lose if he lost this fight, everything about his performance is entirely understandable. I hope they just rebooked him and Dos Santos.
He hasn't fought in over a year, and his last fight was that embarrassing loss to Derek Lewis.
Oh, that was so sad. That's one of the few I watched that fight live because I was covering it. That's one of the few finishes that actively made me angry. I wanted to smack Volkov. Like, why would you throw away all of that work like that for no reason?
Not the first time Lewis has done that to an opponent, though.
If it was just another stereotypical Lewis comeback after, kind of marginally dropping some rounds or whatnot, I might not have been annoyed. But Volkov had hung a couple of 10-8s on Lewis and had nearly finished him at least twice. Like, that was such a... He was winning that fight by such a huge margin. And then to just absolutely throw it all away in the space of about 10 seconds for no reason. It's not like Lewis forced him to do anything either.
I just don't think Volkov has the highest fight IQ. He does have a loss to Czech Congo.
In fairness, that loss to Congo was the fairly typical Czech Congo fare.
But this does put Volkov in a good position right now, because he's in a division that's not very stacked, and he has a win over the former heavyweight champion.
Yeah, I kind of hope they rebooked Volkov and JDS because I liked that fight when they announced it. I was really hoping it happened. It was the fight I was most looking forward to on this card.
Let's see. See what JDS. JDS has lost to Ngannou. What is Ngannou doing right now?
Complaining that he's not fighting for the belt.
Well, yeah.
Maybe
they'll book him against Ngannou. That fight hasn't happened yet.
That fight is very interesting because Volkov is a vastly superior technician, but again, Ngannou is not exactly a scrub and hits really, really hard.
Like a freight train.
What was that stupid stat they were throwing around about him? Like a Prius traveling at 30 miles an hour?
Something like that.
Oh, so God, that was so stupid.
Ngannou might sit out. He might sit out, kind of like Stipe did for the next title shot. That wouldn't surprise me. If he wants to stay busy, the fight with Volkov might be there, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's an option.
And I still like, I still like the Junior Volkov fight if they want to rebook it down the line, provided Junior, won't have to be that staff, because that staff was.
I don't know if it was staph. I don't think they confirmed that. They just said it was bacterial in nature.
Okay, so it could have just been like a bacterial infection.
Well, again, I think to my admittedly untrained eye, it looked a bit like a staph infection, but you can get localized bacterial infections that are not staphylococcus.
All right, so provided he's not sidelined too long for that, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight either.
All right, I think we're just gonna quick hit the rest of this card because
yes, there's nothing else to talk about.
Danny Roberts knocked out Zalim Imadaev in the second round with a really nice punch. Imadaev acquitted himself well, but the finishing sequence was nice. Danny Roberts slipped a somewhat overextended punch, came back with a really nice, tight left hook, and Imadaev proceeded to face plant, and that was all she wrote. Ed Herman defeated Hadis Ibragimov via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. This fight sucked. Look, man, Ed Herman has no gas tank, but because he's fighting terrible light heavyweights, neither do they. Ibragimov just made so many boneheaded decisions in this fight. I don't know. She should not be in the UFC right now. And I don't say that because he's just the worst fighter in the world. He's not. But he is not ready for the UFC right now. I think that's just demonstrably true at this point. He might be there later, but you brought him in at 8-0, and he is very, very raw as a fighter. And there is always going to be a level of refinement that you get when you fight at the highest level, where he doesn't need refinement for the highest level. He needs a lot of baseline work that he should not be trying to get in the UFC. I think he should be fighting elsewhere for another couple of years. He's only 24, I think. He does not need to be where he is right now. Fighting in the UFC at this point is not doing him any favors. Anthony Rocco Martin defeated Ramazan Emeev via unanimous decision, 130-27, 229-28. A fairly typical Rocco Martin fight. I don't know how Ramazan Emeev ate all of those calf kicks and just basically no-sold them. He had some gnarly swelling going on his left calf. Solid win for Martin, who cut one of his better post-fight promos when he announced that his mother was just diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and said, "Mom, get your bucket list ready. We're going out with a bang." For whatever it's worth, my heart breaks for that situation. Cancer sucks. But got a win that he needed. I mean, again, I thought he got a raw deal with that Damian Maia fight. I thought that should have been a draw. I don't think he should have won based on the scoring criteria. But the fact that only one judge gave him a 10-8 in the third, which he absolutely earned under the scoring criteria, was, again, I won't say like the worst thing I've ever seen, but a pretty significant miscarriage of the way the rules are supposed to be adjudicated. Shamil Gamzatov defeated Clinston Abreu via split decision. This fight sucked, and Gamzatov should not have won. Magomed Ankalaev, ooh, buddy. If I might quote John Gooden's call, kicked Dalcha Lungiambula's chin into orbit in the third round with a front kick right up the middle. Ankalaev's legit. His only loss was that literal last-second submission to Paul Craig in a fight he was absolutely dominating. Again, Ankalaev's pretty legit. I'd like to see him take a step up in opposition next, because he fought Craig, and the next three guys have been guys whose position in the UFC is somewhat dubious. But he's finished two of them. He finished Marcin Prachnio. He finished Lungiambula. I think you give him, again, someone who is good next. In all honesty, maybe if Ed Herman's able to have an actual turnaround this time, maybe you give him Ed Herman. That might be a somewhat interesting encounter. Rustam Khabilov moved up to welterweight and defeated Sergey Kondoshko via unanimous decision. Khabilov is a little bit short in terms of his overall frame for welterweight, but he filled out, and it seems that he's not as concerned with his cardio management. He's not an uninteresting addition to the division, all things considered. Carl Robertson defeated Roman Kopylov via rear naked choke in the third round. Not a bad fight in places. Good win for Robertson. He got poked in the eye pretty badly, actually, in the third, and then proceeded to just storm Kopylov to the ground and submit him. Credit to him for that. That was.
Kopylov is 10-3 in the UFC.
Yeah, I'm curious what he's going to do at welterweight. David Zawada defeated Abubakar Nurmagomedov via triangle choke in the first round. Really nice finishing sequence from Zawada here. Pardon me. Kind of got the triangle position, used the threat of the choke to attack the triangle armbar, then used the defense Nurmagomedov employed to lock up really sink in the choke. Again, a good finish from him. Roosevelt Roberts defeated Alexander Yakovlev via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the boards. Good win for Roberts, actually. Yakovlev is a tough out. He's been beaten before, but he's a tough guy, and Roberts is one of those guys, and a lot of guys have this that are coming up in the sport right now. Their grappling game against the fence is wildly different from their grappling game in open space. In open space, he kind of got controlled a little bit. When he was able to get to the fence, whole different story. Pani Kianzad defeated Jessica Rose Clark via unanimous decision. Your generic women's bantamweight fight. I don't know what else to say about it. And kicking everything off, Davey Grant defeated Grigory Popov via split decision. I was okay with 29-28 either way. I think I scored it. I can't remember who I scored it for live. But not a bad fight, actually. Good little bantamweight scrap. For those of you who care about such things, your fight of the night was officially Zabit versus Cater. Performances for Magomed Ankalaev and David Zawada, both of which I think are well-deserved. All right, Jeff. Anything you stand out to you about that card?
Nope.
Any burning desires?
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope.
Alrighty. The Russians did not have a good night for that card. Just numerically, statistically speaking, not a good night for the Russians, for the home team. But thank you to everyone who read, be that live or after the fact. I know a few of you showed up somewhat earlier in the morning or early afternoon to kind of dump on Greg Hardy. And you know what, guys, I get it. And if that's what I'm just happy you're reading. So whatever you do to amuse yourselves, whatever you want to say, God bless you for being there. I know that there's other places you can get that type of content.
Greg Hardy's going to be fighting for the world title in a couple years.
If ESPN has their way, he will. All right, moving on. This coming Saturday, the UFC is back in Sao Paulo for UFC on ESPN Plus 22. Main event, Jan Blachowicz, a really underappreciated light heavyweight at the moment, who had a really bad run in the UFC at one point, was 1-4 over a 5-fight stretch. Now is 4-1 over his last 5, actually. Coming off of a really, really high-profile knockout win over Luke Rockhold, will welcome another former middleweight to the division in the form of Ronaldo Jacare Souza. Jacare was last seen losing a decision to Jack Hermanson in April of this year. Not a bad fight. I'm curious to see what Jacare will do up at light heavyweight. And Blachowicz is a stern test. He's a good grappler. He's got power. A decent enough fighter out of either stance, although from southpaw he tends to much more heavily favor the left body kick and is a little predictable with it. But his right hook is coming along from that stance as well. So again, Jacare's got his handful, even if you think he's going to win. And I don't know that 5 rounds is going to be a factor in this fight. I don't think this one's going all 5. The way both men fight seem to, the way they match up, kind of indicate that's a lower probability outcome.
It's kind of weird, this fight, because Blachowicz is sort of in the midst of one of the better runs of his career. And he was kind of sort of up and down, like he was fairly nondescript earlier in his UFC career, don't you think? Like he started at 0-2. He went 1-4 in his first 5 UFC fights. Then he had a 4.
Hang on, I think he went 2-5 in his first
2-5 in his first 6. But he was on a 1-4 skid in 5 fights.
Yeah, because he debuted and stopped Ilir Latifi with a body kick, lost 2 fights, won 1, lost 2, and then went on his current run.
Okay. But then he lost to Thiago Santos, who fought for the title next. And then that
was basically a title eliminator.
Yeah. And then he beat Luke Rockhold trying to make a go of it at light heavyweight. And now he's fighting another middleweight contender who's trying to make a go of things at light heavyweight. Man, as much as I hate to say it, I think I'm leaning toward Blachowicz here. You know how much I love Jacare. Right?
I do. And
Jacare's moving. He's not young. He's not young.
No, he's not.
Blachowicz isn't a spring chicken, but he's younger than Jacare right now. And I'm not saying like Jacare isn't. I mean, he's definitely old for the sport, but he's 40. Let's see. He's 39. He's turning 40 in December. And I think he's still capable of being competitive, but I definitely feel like he's slowing down.
Yeah, I'm curious.
5 years ago, he wasn't getting finished or dominated by these type of guys.
I'm curious what his strategy will be, because we saw a better I think Luke Rockhold's a better wrestler than Jacare in terms of straight wrestling.
That fight was mainly contested on the feet, though, as I recall.
It was.
There wasn't grappling in that fight.
Well, no, there was a lot of grappling because Rockhold really wanted to get the fight to the ground, and Blachowicz was just stonewalling him against the fence.
Wait,
And I'm
I mean for Jacare versus Weidman.
Jacare and Weidman.
Yeah.
No, that was almost entirely on the feet.
That was Jacare's last win. Yeah. I'm leaning toward Blachowicz by decision.
I think the longer this fight goes, the more it kind of tends to favor Jacare, actually.
Interesting.
Well, he's fought 5 rounds before. A few different times, actually.
Blachowicz
hasn't.
So this will be like the first actual 5-round main event for Blachowicz. And here's, you see, I'm wondering, does the win over Rockhold even make Blachowicz an elite competitor at this point? I'm not so sure.
It certainly helps his case.
It helps his case, but
I mean, is that the singular tipping point? No, probably not.
Because it's a win over Luke Rockhold, but it's post championship Luke Rockhold, who was not as inspiring as he was earlier in his UFC career, or even Strikeforce for that matter.
Now, I'm curious how much striking on the feet Jacare will look to do. I think Rockhold kind of undid himself in that fight with Blachowicz by trying so hard to get that to the ground for as long as he did. I think he gassed himself out.
How good do you think Blachowicz's striking in kickboxing is?
Pretty good.
Like
he was hanging in there with Thiago Santos, and that man is a marauding renegade on the feet.
He did beat Jared Cannonier, and Jared Cannonier, granted, was not the elite competitor he is right now at that point. Jimmy Manuwa is a pretty good striker, I think.
Manuwa had a lot of power. Blachowicz also did very well on the feet against Gustafsson. Gustafsson won that fight because he was able to get him down and just kind of control and work him over from top position. So again, Blachowicz is good. He's a very, very good fighter, all things considered.
It's just that in Jacare, let's see, the size advantage here. Blachowicz is 6 foot 78-inch reach, and what does Jacare have?
Jacare is 6'1" and has a 72-inch reach.
So height advantage isn't that big, but Blachowicz is going to have a serious reach advantage here. The question is, can Jacare close the distance? Can he work his grappling in here? Will he be able to take Blachowicz down, work his grappling, work his submissions? Which are one of the deadliest elements of his arsenal. I'm not so sure. I don't feel great. Because he's moving up in weight.
Well, I think if nothing else, he will set up his grappling attempts better than Rockhold did. Rockhold did very, very little to disguise them, whereas Jacare will actually strike with you if the mood strikes him. And I'm rooting for Jacare, but I'm leaning towards Blachowicz a little bit.
If he gets persuaded into a striking battle, I think I would sort of favor Blachowicz because he has more length to kind of keep Jacare at bay. And it'll be Jacare who will have to close the distance here.
Blachowicz is also a little bit trickier with his striking. Jacare is very good, but he's also very, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, he's very kind of meat and potatoes about his striking.
I agree. Not that it's... And Jacare is powerful, too. He is capable... I wouldn't say he's like a one-hit quitter generally, but his striking is dangerous. In volume, it is very dangerous. I really want to pick Jacare, but he's let me down a lot in some of his recent fights. So
yeah, the Hermanson one for me was kind of a big one because you don't really think of Jacare as being a choke artist, but if you look at the fights that he's lost, they tend to be the big ones. And I'm not sure how big this one is. So
Yoel Romero one was really close.
yeah,
and there were some rounds just with a lot of inactivity. The Whittaker one, I mean Whittaker just he was on a path of dominance at that point. Like the Gastelum fight really disappointed me.
yeah.
And the Hermanson fight. Gastelum more so.
But I think it's a relevant fight. It's a good main event. All thing again, kind of just taken in totality. Your co-main event.
So who are you picking though?
I'm leaning towards Blachowicz,
Okay.
but I'm rooting for Jacare for whatever that's worth.
Okay, fair enough. Shobane, got our boy Shobane is back. Shogun.
This was supposed to be Mauricio Shogun Rua fighting Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey, however, broke his hand, and in steps the Bear Jew, Paul Craig. I don't know what to expect out of this fight.
Okay.
I mean, Shogun.
This is his first fight since December of last year.
Yeah, when he stopped Tyson Pedro with strikes in a fight Tyson Pedro should have won.
What can we even expect of Shogun at this point, though?
I don't know. I mean, if his knees are somewhat healthy, he has a good kicking game.
Like, has he been training and is he ready for this fight, you think?
I imagine so.
Because that's been another issue with him throughout his career.
This is also this is the biggest fight of Paul Craig's career, who's had a very kind of up and down UFC run.
Now, this interview was back in the archives, but I specifically remember at one point, Rafael Cordero told me about Shogun, where this was back in 2011, the night of the first Henderson fight. He says he doesn't want to train hard. I don't want to work with him anymore. And it could have been angry, but that was what Rafael Cordero told me on the record, I might add. The night of the Henderson Shogun fight, the first one.
Well, Cordero's just also, in fairness, Cordero's understanding of training hard is basically full-on wars in the gym every day.
Yeah.
So, look, again, Shogun's motivation and work ethic has been kind of a cloud over his head at different points throughout his career.
Nonetheless, has had a very good, successful career.
He's probably the third best light heavyweight ever.
You know, he didn't have those moments where he'd never had a long title run, but when you look at who he's fought, who he's beaten throughout his career, he's done very well for himself. And he's in his last 5, he's 4-1.
He is. He's 4-1 in his last 5,
including wins over Corey Anderson.
Corey, they can't match my pace, Anderson. Yeah, whatever, Corey.
So, I mean that was almost 4 years ago at this point. So it's however much stock you want to put in that.
It was kind of a bad decision anyway.
I don't see Shogun making another title run, but I don't know. Like I don't know what he wants out of his career. Like, is he fighting just because he likes fighting and he wants to be a fighter, or does he think he's making another run at the title?
I don't know. That's a very, very interesting question. I'm picking him here, but
I'm mainly picking him here because I haven't really. I could see Craig getting the knockout here because it is an older, declining Shogun, and also we never know what Shogun is going to show up, so you have to take that into account. But Craig is he's 12-4, and he has all 4 losses in the UFC. He's 3-4. He's 4-4 in the UFC. They're basically giving This is meant to be a winning fight for Shogun. This is Shogun's fight to lose.
Again, this was originally supposed to be Sam Alvey, which is a fight that I think even more heavily favors Shogun.
Right, but even so, even like I'm questioning if Shogun can even win a fight against a 500 UFC fighter.
Yeah, it's a real question.
And the reason I say that is because, one, we never know what Shogun is going to show up. Two is his chin. You know, he doesn't have like that epic chin anymore. His chin, well, I won't say it's shot. It's not as strong as it used to be.
It's certainly cracked.
And he's 30. And he's 37. He's not like he can't rely on youth anymore at this point. So I'm going to pick Shogun, but let's just say some sort of upset knockout wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, again, I won't be terribly shocked if Craig pulls this off, but I'm picking Hua. All right, we have this is a good fight actually. Charles Oliveira will be battling Jared Flash Gordon. Gordon just broke a 2-fight losing streak, but even those 2 losses, they were kind of barn burners with Carlos Diego Ferreira and Joaquim Silva.
Does Oliveira still have the record for submission wins in UFC?
Yes.
Okay, so it's at 13. See, I like Oliveira, but you know, he's just had so many issues with the UFC going back years, but he seems to be in a good place now. So
well, he's won his last 5 fights.
Right.
Hasn't missed weight for any of them.
Hasn't missed weight in a while.
I mean, in his current run at lightweight, he's 7-1, and the loss was to Paul Felder.
He's finished his last 5 too.
Excuse me, 6-1
so
at lightweight.
He's 30 years old now. Maybe he's starting to mature.
Yeah, God, he's been in the UFC for a long time.
I mean, I'm not sure I see him going on like a Rafael dos Anjos type run, but where is he even ranked right now?
I don't think so.
Like he could.
He is. Oh, sorry, he is number 13.
Okay, I think that's pretty fair right now. Lightweight being what it is. So who's he fighting? He's fighting Jared Gordon, who, I mean, on paper this looks like a winnable fight for Du Bronx, don't you think?
It is. I mean, I'm picking him to win. It is absolutely a winnable fight for him.
See, Gordon is 2-2 at lightweight, wins over Hakran Diaz and Dan Murray. I'm picking Oliveira. But we'll see.
If Oliveira wins, for the love of all that's holy, give him a ranked opponent.
I agree.
Give him Gregor Gillespie. I want to see how that would play out.
I would not mind that fight, and I think if Oliveira were to win here, he would very much deserve a bigger fight. But I mean, I feel like if Oliveira can win this, like now's the time for him to kind of make a big run of it.
If he's gonna make a run, he is rapidly running out of time to.
What about him fighting Barboza
around with?
That fight would be interesting.
Him and Barboza would be interesting.
Or Iaquinta.
Yeah, again, put him against anybody in that top group, and I'm interested in the fights. And
I think if he wins here, he's due for a fight in the top 10, very much so.
All right, next up, I do not understand this fight's placement on the card, but Antonio Arroyo will fight Andre Muniz.
Is it a Brazil thing, maybe?
I think so. I know nothing of either guy. I believe they're both making their UFC debuts. Excuse me.
Let's see. I guess they wanted a little more Brazilian talent on the card. It seems a bit odd to me.
Arroyo has won a couple of times on the Contender Series, but is making his debut here. While Muniz is same thing. Won twice on the Contender Series, making his debut.
The only reason I don't have too much of an issue is it's an ESPN Plus card, and I don't know. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they wanted to have another set of middleweights, and they wanted a contender series guy on there. That's what I'm thinking.
Could be. All right. Next up, Marcus Perez will fight Wellington Turman. I believe Turman stepping in on short notice. Yeah, this was supposed to be Marcus Perez and Jack Marshman.
Oh, too bad. That could have been a decent fight.
It would have been a little bit. Marcus Perez would engage the brawl that Jack Marshman always claims he wants. Perez has been a little bit up and down in the UFC. He's 2-2 in the UFC, I think. Yeah. But this seems like a winnable fight for him. And Turman is. He lost his UFC debut to Carl Robertson. Yeah, I'll go with Perez here. But this seems more like a fight that's just kind of designed to be fan-friendly as opposed to anything else. All right, as for the rest of this card. This is a good fight. Sergio Moraes and James Krause. Surprisingly good fight. Moraes, unfortunately, on a bit of a losing streak, with losses to Anthony Rocco Martin and Warley Alves, while Krause, he's been out for a while, hasn't he? Yeah, it's been over a year, geez. But he is on a 5-fight winning streak. I'm going to lean towards Krause, but again, that's a good fight. Ricardo Ramos will fight Luis Eduardo Garagori. Garagori is Uruguayan. I have to confirm this now. Yes, Uruguayan. He had a successful UFC debut against Umberto Bondanai, who should not be in the UFC. I'm going with Ramos here. He's a much more proven UFC caliber fighter. He's only lost once in the promotion. That was to Said Nurmagomedov. Yeah, Ramos. Francisco Trinaldo and Bobby Green is going to fly under a lot of radars, but that's a good fight. Let me see. Trinaldo, been trading wins and losses recently, coming off of the loss to Alexander Hernandez, whereas Bobby Green, on a pretty epic skid, actually. I'm going to go with Trinaldo there, but age is rapidly catching up with old Masaran Duba. Warley Alves will fight Randy Brown. Winnable fight for Alves, I think. I mean, Randy Brown's not bad, but he came into the UFC and was kind of supposed to be a big deal, and, well, he's not. Douglas Silva de Andrade will fight Renan Barao. Wow, that fight is buried on this card.
Really, Alves is the last guy who beat Colby Covington.
He's the only guy to beat Colby Covington. He caught him in a guillotine choke, if memory serves, very early in the first round. Douglas Silva de Andrade coming off of the loss to Peter Yan, but is a really tough out. And Renan Barao, former champion, unfortunately on a 4-fight losing streak.
I hope Renan Barao saved what money he made during this title run, which I don't know how good it was, but I hope he saved it.
Barao has also missed weight for his last 2 fights. One of those really badly, and Luke Sanders knocked him out in the last fight. I have De Andrade here, actually. This is Barao moving up to featherweight. Moving back to featherweight? He's fought in the UFC.
This is Barao's last shot. Like, if he loses here, he should probably be cut. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying that look. He's lost 4 in a row.
He is 1-6 in his last 7. That one win is over Felipe Nover, right. And he's missed weight in his last 2 fights.
Right. So if he loses here, that's 0-5. And I feel like the UFC. I believe in the past the UFC has let go of much better guys for less. Do you remember Paul Sass?
I do.
Like, he lost 1 or 2 fights and they let him go.
Yeah.
And
they cut, who's that Danish fellow who uses the cross guard? They cut Mads Burnell, who was a really good fighter.
Maybe they weren't elite world beaters, but they, I think, had a lot of upside to keep on the roster. And Barao has just not been cutting it, man. I'm just saying that's just the reality.
Let's see. Next up, Ariana Lipski will fight Veronica Macedo. Boy, they are really trying to turn. They're still trying to make Lipski a thing. She's 0-2 in the UFC. Macedo just got her first win in the UFC, actually. Jeez. Okay, cut the loser of this, please. Ugh. I'm going with Macedo, but who knows? And then kicking everything off, Vanessa Mello will fight Tracy Cortez. Mello is coming off of a loss to Irene Aldana. Not that long ago, actually. Yeah, Aldana tuned her up, man. And Cortez making her UFC debut, but on a 6-fight winning streak. I'm going to go with Cortez, actually. Mello did not really impress me in that Aldana fight. All right, Jeff, again, there's a few fights that are going to fly under some radars there that might be pretty decent. What do you want to touch on?
Ronaldo Bobby Green, I think he'd at least be a fun fight. Even though, man, there was a point where I was real excited about Bobby Green. He seemed like he seemed far from, the hood-style kid from the Affliction event. Remember those days?
I do.
Like he was really growing and then just had some setbacks.
Yeah, he had that. Didn't he have like an injury around the same time? He wound up taking custody of his sister's kid, something like that.
And then his brother was murdered, right?
Something like that, yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm misremembering that, but it's been like he's had some things in his personal life that have, I do not fault him for at all. But Trinaldo is not, considering the man he's 41 now and he's been able to hang around in the UFC. That in itself, I think, is pretty impressive. At one point, let's see, he went on, I think, a 7-fight winning streak at lightweight, right?
Something along those lines.
He's coming off a loss here, but I mean, to be 23-7 and to have that many wins in the UFC at an advanced age like this and still kind of be fairly competitive, I think is pretty impressive. I think he might win here too.
Yeah, it's a winnable fight for him.
I'm kind of interested in the De Andrade Barao fight just because, Barao used to be a phenom. It's just so bizarre to see him take such a dramatic downturn in his career. I wonder what happened.
He never addressed the tendencies that TJ Dillashaw exploited. I think is the big problem he ran into.
Did Dillashaw expose him, you think?
Elements of his game, yes. It's less about him not being good and more about, hey, here's habits. Here's ways to capitalize on them. And it turns out that what TJ Dillashaw did to capitalize on those habits were replicable at scale by people of less ability.
What I remember about Barao before the Dillashaw fight, guys couldn't even take him down. And guys had trouble, dealing with his defense and striking. Like Faber couldn't even deal with him. So, yeah. So that's about it, though.
All right. Saturday, I will have coverage of that in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, so feel free to stop by, say hello. Always appreciated. All right. As for the news, you know what? Let's just start with this. Nate Diaz announced he is taking a hiatus from the fight game. He's still not as bad as his brother Nick, who would retire after every fight.
That's what he said. He said, we do it over, but still, I'm going out to Peter back game. Peace. It made. That's what he said on Instagram.
I imagine Nate Diaz will be back at some point in the nearish future, but
Yeah.
I mean, look, he had 2 fights this year. They were both tough fights. If you want to take some time off and do other stuff, hey, Godspeed and party on, man. You don't owe me anything.
I mean, look, they could book that third fight with Connor, and people would turn in for it. People would tune in for it. Would they not?
Oh yeah, they would.
So just because it's the trilogy and the rubber match there, and it's Conor McGregor and it's Nate Diaz, it would get a lot of attention. And Nate Diaz's cult of sycophants are still throwing a fit about what happened with the doctor and sending death threats to that poor doctor who was doing his job. And I don't really think he messed up by stopping the fight. I'm sorry.
Me neither.
At first it didn't. Look, I get the knee-jerk reaction and all, and I get people don't really use common sense when they're on social media and actually take a minute to take a breath and think about things, but still, don't threaten people on social media. Come on here. Like, what are we even doing here? I don't think Diaz is retired. I just think he's doing the Nate Diaz thing. If and when an opportunity comes up for him to take a big money fight again, he'll do it. It's that simple.
I agree.
But Diaz is, he's not a world champion, and he never will be. And, as long as he's getting paid big money, I don't think it really matters to him.
Probably not. I mean, would you rather be rich or world champion? Most people would say money, would take the money.
I mean, Darren Till. Some fighters care more. Some fighters care more about the accolades.
Yeah, and then they wind up like Darren Till.
I mean, Khabib, for instance, cares more about the accolades.
Khabib does.
So,
and
he's one of your favorite fighters.
Well, Khabib's monolithic mania about that is also bolstered by an incredible sense of restraint and focus that's afforded to him by a strict religious belief system.
Sure. I mean, look, a lot of fighters are a different breed, and they're just wired differently anyway. So,
that's true.
And if you become champion, usually the money and the money comes with the accolades. So
that is the hope.
One would assume. So I don't think Diaz is gone for good, but he's gone. Look, he didn't fight for 3 years, and he fought twice this year. So that in itself was fairly monumental.
Yeah, and again, and neither of those were easy fights.
Right. Masvidal is arguably one of the best in the division right now and could be fighting for the title next, all things considered. So, it was a tough fight. I think significantly tougher than Anthony Pettis.
Oh, yeah. By a wide margin. I think
McGregor, just being in the place he is, will want the trilogy fight at some point, but who knows? McGregor might be stupid enough to pick a fight with Jorge Masvidal. Who knows?
That would certainly be an amusing fight to watch play out.
I mean, I think I would find it very amusing.
All right, what else do we have? Oh, suppose this counts. Former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker has said he wants to fight Darren Till in London, one of the upcoming cards.
I don't like that fight.
I'm okay with it. I mean, it's a big step for Till again because Whittaker is, I still think, probably the second best middleweight in the division. But, I want to give Robert Whittaker credit for not asking for an immediate rematch because so many champions do.
Till is just, I don't know. He just seems to have a lot of mental blocks right now.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. it's a winnable fight for Whittaker. It's a fairly high profile kind of scenario as well.
I mean, it would probably draw well.
And Till's apparently a fairly large star in the UK.
He is. I think the fight with Thompson did very well in the UK, right?
Had a very, very boisterous crowd, if nothing else.
I don't know.
I mean, again, I'm okay if that's the direction everyone wants to go. I'm okay with that fight. I favor Whittaker.
Till in a different fight first, but Till is such in a weird place. I could see him losing like those gimme fights.
Yeah, I mean, his also kind of stated mentality at the moment seems to be, I'm going to fight the best, because if I'm not fighting the best, what am I doing? And I can appreciate that, even though I think it is largely proven to be foolhardy over history.
A bizarre sport where, like, it's not scripted. It's not WWE, so you can't. Even those gimme fight scenarios we've seen have been turned on their heads. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened.
Yeah, it has. So, again, if that's what everyone wants, I think it would be a fine fight. I mean, those two would get after it.
Well, hopefully Whittaker will stay healthy now.
That would be nice as well.
Apparently he was very healthy going into the Adesanya fight and didn't have any issues.
Again, hopefully he stays healthy. I don't hate the idea of a rematch between him and Adesanya down the road, if assuming both men continue to win.
John Jones said on Twitter that he wants a fight with Dominic Reyes, and I can't be opposed to that. I think Corey Anderson's not like an idiot, but I don't think he knows how to play the game.
Part of that's true. Part of it's also just the UFC is higher on Reyes than Anderson.
Reyes has the better wins.
He does.
And he's won more fights at light heavyweight than, at least recently. Let's see.
Anderson's been in the UFC for a while. I think Anderson might have more overall wins.
But Reyes is undefeated in MMA and the UFC, and he's 1-2-3. He's 6-0 in the UFC. So Anderson has only won his last 4, and he's only just now getting his first knockout in years over an impressive opponent.
No, I'm down for that fight. Reyes is the next deserving contender. Line him up, give him a shot.
I think it's Reyes right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Now that Walker's kind of not been derailed, but he's sort of been set back at this point, yeah, I want it to be Reyes.
I look forward to the fight, such as I can look forward to those types of fights at this point.
Not been having his most impressive performances as of late, but at least he's willing to fight these guys now.
He seems to have kind of come around on the I'm just going to fight the next guy up bit of mentality. And, again, is there a tremendous amount of prestige he gains by beating guys like, Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos? No, not really. Yeah, but they're the next guys up.
Adesanya and Helwani are already, putting it out there that they want Jones versus Adesanya. If the stars align that way, maybe. But Adesanya just won the belt. There are guys he has to fight too.
Yeah, Adesanya seems interested in fighting Yoel Romero, and God bless him for that, because I don't know too many people that are.
So he's not going to be the guy who just beat Yoel Romero.
Costa's injured, or getting surgery on his biceps.
So
Costa's out of the picture at the moment. That's what precipitated the discussion about Romero as the next title challenger, was his unavailability. I mean, look, if Adesanya and Jones at this time next year are both in this same place, make the fight.
I think
But
you would love Romero versus Adesanya.
Romero and Adesanya, I am very interested in that fight. Yes, I'm interested in Adesanya and Costa. I'm interested in Adesanya and Whittaker having a rematch at some point.
I'd be curious. Do you think Cannonier at this point could be fighting for the title eventually? Do you think he can maintain this momentum?
I mean, if he wins one more fight, I think he's the next guy up. Especially if it's another big fight.
I like the Cannonier Adesanya fight a lot.
That's a very good fight. I mean, I think Adesanya came out publicly this last week and said that Cannonier is probably the most dangerous guy in the division for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is how much he's flying under the radar.
I mean, Cannonier's he's somebody right now. He's a guy to beat right now.
And he's absolutely in the equation.
It definitely took us by surprise, but you have to take him seriously after beating Jack Hermanson the way he did.
I mean, he's fought 3 talented middleweights, and he's finished them all inside of like 7 minutes.
So
he's definitely someone we have to consider.
Let's see, and then middleweight's getting a little depleted right now, though, Robert.
There's a lot of guys. There were a lot of older guys who'd been cutting a lot of weight who are now moving up.
Right. Jacare's out of the picture there right now.
Weidman, Rockhold.
I don't want to say Gastelum's a lost cause, but like
he's
gatekeeper. He's a high-level gatekeeper, right?
Well, he's out of the picture at the moment, given the way the last couple of fights have played out.
Brunson, to me, is just a perennial top 10 dude.
Yeah, maybe he exists.
He's there. He's a perennial top 10 gatekeeper. Shabazian could amount to something at some point. Lloyd Helby, Uriah Hall is in the top 15 at number 12.
In all fairness, he probably should be somewhere in that position, given where his career is and where the division is right now.
Yeah, a division that's getting a little depleted.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they're gonna, kind of restock it over the next little bit. Who's gonna rise to the occasion? Because you mentioned Shabazian, and boy, howdy, is that guy on a run.
Shabazian looks like a good prospect, so it looks like we need the division to kind of reset itself a little bit lower down. Let's see what happens. Adesanya had a pretty meteoric rise that is very
absolutely insane.
I mean, I can see why people will talk about him with Jones, because both him and Jones had very meteoric rises. How long did it take for Jones to fight to become champion? Like inside 3 years, right?
I forget exactly.
Debuted in the UFC in early 2009, won the title. So it took less than 3 years for him to win the belt. I think Adesanya, it took him even less time, correct?
Yeah, he debuted in did he debut in 18?
I believe so. The thing is, Jones was basically a rookie in MMA when he started his career. His UFC career, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Adesanya debuted for the UFC last year in February.
Yeah. That's crazy. To go from your UFC debut to champ inside of 2 years.
Against the guys he did it against too. Like, that's nuts.
I mean, his last two opponents. Those are 2 of the tougher, touches you can get at middleweight right now.
Oh yeah.
So if it's I wouldn't mind that so much.
I think if both Jones and Adesanya are still in this position 12 months from now, I think you should make that fight. But I think middleweight needs to get the gears turning a little bit more. And, ditto light heavyweight. Again, let's get the machine rolling again a little bit before we potentially disrupt it with a super fight between those two.
Okay. So however much this means to anyone in the MMA fandom, Combate Americas has a new TV deal. AXS TV and Fight Network will be the exclusive English language broadcast partners in North America for Combate Americas. So AXS TV will do the English language broadcast for Combate in the US, and Fight Network will be the broadcaster in Canada. So this is a bit interesting to me because after Anthem Media acquired the controlling interest in AXS TV, they basically shoved off AXS TV fights in LFA, and now they have this new deal with Combate Americas. So I'm a little bit surprised by that, but
a little as well for me. I think there might have been some kind of issue where in the contracts where AXS was helping with the production costs for LFA that they will not be subsidizing for Combate kind of thing.
Maybe that's it. In related news, LFA now has a streaming partner in UFC Fight Pass. So
Good
LFA,
for them.
They were able to bounce back with UFC Fight Pass as their new broadcast streaming deal. And look, who even watches AXS TV anyway? They're not a high-rated network, right? And they're not in that many homes compared to an ESPN.
I will defer to your knowledge of the household availability on that issue.
Like, I think AXS TV was put in more, but I think they're not in as many as a major cabler. Like, let's see. Like, I remember for a long time I didn't even get AXS TV or HDNet on.
I think I still don't actually on my current deal.
See, I'm trying to look up how many.
Well, again, I think some of this might just be that they don't have. There's a lot of like production elements that they won't be maybe on the hook for because Combate has been running for a while and have a very, very like smooth production. If the only money that AXS TV is shelling out for is another set of commentary, then I can see why they made that move.
So they're gonna have Combate is gonna have the pay-per-view in December with Tito Ortiz, Alberto El Patron.
What a colossal clown fiesta that is.
And then the broadcast deal will start, I guess, early next year. And the goal is to broadcast a minimum of 35 Combate events in 2020. So we'll see.
I mean, look, Combate is a perfectly fine promotion. They do some pretty good work. I'm baffled by Ortiz and Del Rio or Dos Caras Jr., whatever his actual name is.
So,
I mean, on the plus side, Dos Caras Jr. has actually fought in mixed martial arts in the past.
I'm all for getting more MMA on TV. I'm in favor of that. So I don't have a problem with that. I was just a little surprised because it seemed like AXS TV was moving that content off. And you're right, there could have been sort of different issues there in terms of production costs. So who knows?
I mean, given how quickly they moved on to something like this, I almost imagine it has to be something like that because, I mean, again, LFA is a really good promotion. I'm glad they're going to be on Fight Pass. I'm glad they're sticking around. So
I just never even heard ratings or numbers for AXS TV or Fight Pass for that matter, other than the vague ones we've gotten out there from Dana White every once in a while.
Yeah, the UFC doesn't care about Fight Pass. They've made that abundantly clear.
I can't find how many million homes AXS TV is in.
It's an open question, I suppose. I mean, look, if they're in a million, then I am. I mean, look, isn't there a big thing right now? Like we have Impact, which no one's watching.
Yeah, they're not a highly viewed network. They just aren't. Let's see, ESPN million homes. I'm just trying to. ESPN ESPN has got to be close to, I would think, 100 million.
One would assume.
But, okay. As of September 2018, ESPN was in 86 million television households. So
Sounds about right.
All right. I would have thought it would have been more, but...
Well, that was over a year ago.
And the TV situation in the U.S. is so weird right now.
Yeah, that's... Watching the streaming bubble burst over the next 2 years or so is going to be interesting.
But then you have fiber optic TV. You still have satellite. You still have cable, and then now you have digital internet TV. It's so weird. Like you can get like cable channels on through your Wi-Fi connection now. Like
Yep.
Basically through Amazon. And then PlayStation View, I hear PlayStation View is shutting down. Is that accurate?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of went on a bit of a tangent there, but that's going on with Combate and AXS TV. So there you go.
I think that's it. That's all I've got. Let me refresh Twitter very quickly, because I am absolutely not going to give any time of day to pseudo-celebrity boxing.
Good for you. I agree.
Didn't even watch the fight. I think I saw some like GIFs on Twitter or whatnot. Based on the GIFs I saw, that fight looks like if you took two 8th grade jocks in a drama class and showed them Fury versus Wilder and said recreate it. That's kind of what it would look like. It was comical.
Magomedov wants an apology from NSAC before fighting in Las Vegas. Eyes New York as alternative.
They are never going to apologize because they are a ridiculous bureaucracy. And if he chooses to never fight in Nevada again, go ahead, man. You're under no contractual obligation to fight in that particular state.
MMA Fighting City said this during a Q&A in Moscow. So I guess he's still unhappy he was punished over the post-fight brawl with McGregor.
I mean, I wouldn't be jumping to get into New York, given that they fined Corey Anderson like $1,000. Was it $1,000 or $10,000?
I believe we did talk about this last week. So there was a development in the Walt Harris kidnapping case. There was a suspect has been arrested. Walt Harris's daughter, Anaya Blanchard, the stepdaughter of Walt Harris, is still missing. So again, if you know anything related to the case and the missing Anaya Blanchard, anything related to the suspect Ibrahim Yazid, please contact the necessary authorities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope that young girl is returned safely.
Ditto. I think that will do it for us this evening. So on that note, what would you like to plug, Jeff?
Next reviews will be Ford versus Ferrari and likely the Charlie's Angels reboot.
I weep for you.
All the things to reboot. They're rebooting this one and The Report, which I think is getting some interesting awards buzz, probably for Adam Driver for Best Actor. So those will be the upcoming movie reviews. Check out my Blu-ray. If you like anime, check out my Blu-ray review of the limited edition Blu-ray set for Goblin Slayer, one of my favorite shows of the last couple of years. And yeah. Some new interviews. New on the like Robert mentioned earlier, new on the Apple podcast for the 411 Wrestling Interview Podcast. Jungle Girl, who, did she win on Saturday night? I'm gonna check.
Did she even wrestle on Saturday night?
Yeah, she wrestled on WoW against Tessa Blanchard.
Then she probably didn't win. Tessa's kind of like God in WoW.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Tessa Blanchard won, but she fought Tessa Blanchard last night for the world title unsuccessfully. enjoyed talking to Jungle Girl. She's a 20-year veteran. So if you have time, please go to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast channel. You can also listen to it on Spotify or the 411 Mania YouTube channel. I would appreciate it if you gave it a look. Thank you.
As for myself, this Tuesday, Mark Radulich and I can't remember if we have a third person sitting in on this one or not. We'll be reviewing Dr. Sleep, which unfortunately seems to not have a tremendous amount of traction at the box office right now. I haven't seen it myself yet, but I will shortly. Last week, Mark and I got together to talk about Terminator Dark Fate, which exists, so you can get our full review. And Mark finally found a movie review so unbelievably obtuse I swore on air. It's something I try really hard not to do. But he found one and got me to do it, so you can listen to the two of us talk about that. And I think I have anything else this coming week. Nope, just coverage on Saturday in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, so thank you all again. However you found us, be that the 411 Mania website. Again, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. I think we're on iHeartRadio, actually, on their podcast setup. If you have some other podcasting app that you're using, I don't know what you're using, but thank you. Please subscribe to stay up to date. Please interact with the product a little bit. Just give us a review. If you have a star potential, give us a star. Only one. I'm only asking for one, guys. If you think it's worth more, give us more. If you think it's worth less, you can't go less than one. So please at least give us the one. Leave a comment or a review if that's kind of your bag. I'm happy to accept constructive criticism. And we'll be back here next week to review the event in Sao Paulo. And no, that's it for next week. Because with the holiday season coming up, we'll just have news and that review, and then the next card will be UFC on ESPN, the Overeem and Rosenstrike card on December 7th. So next week will be the 17th. We will be off the 24th then, and then come back on the 1st of December. Okay, good to know. Actually, that might actually line up quite well with something I might try doing on the 24th then. In fact, yeah, that actually gives me a really nice timetable to try something a little bit different here on this under the auspices of this program. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Thank you everyone again. See you next week. Until then, stay safe out there and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.